Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here again. Last year was my first presentation here to many of you, and I just want to give you a brief reminder of the type of work that we're focusing in on, because it's not the most common form of spinal cord injury. You know, the spinal cord injury can take place in many different regions of the spinal cord, and we have over the past over 10 years specialized more and more on the lumbosacral part of the spinal cord, meaning the lowest part of the spinal cord that is directly controlling not just the bladder and autonomic organs, but also when there's an injury there, people end up with paralysis, numbness in the lower part of the body, and also, unfortunately, a lot of the times with a pain that can be quite severe. So what we have done in our lab for the past over 10 years up at UCLA, when I was working up there both as a neurologic rehabilitation physician, but also in the research lab, is to work on the repair of conus cauda equina injuries, as this entity is often referred to. And when we started working on this, there really weren't many research programs around focusing on this, and we really had to start from scratch on a lot of things, which actually ended up being in some ways an advantage, because we can just go in and work without any preset ideas, but really do new discovery science and bring this to translation and so forth. And I'm very pleased to see that there's also a growing number of labs paying more and more interest in this type of spinal cord injury, because what was a bit heartbreaking at the time was also realizing that in most, if not all, clinical trials going on, this category of patients were excluded because of the deficits that were presenting, and the type of injury were often felt that they had neurological problems that would make it harder for the other spinal cord injury trials to be interpreted, which meant that they often were left on the side. And we're hoping that this will be very different in the future, because there are new approaches and ideas and techniques being developed that I think will be able to bring more hope towards a future with also clinical trials and hopefully also treatments over years to come. So as our steward said here, that a lot of the work we do focusing on the bladder, and the bladder is a very interesting organ in that it is innervated by pretty much every type of nerve cell in the broad categories of the nervous system. In order for a bladder to work, you need good motor control, you need good sensory information, but also you need different types of autonomic innervation. And it's really like having an orchestra playing. You need to have each instrument doing the correct thing, but also doing it with the correct timing. Because in spinal cord injury, what happens a lot of the time is that the instruments are playing, but not playing together. So part of the new studies that we do in our lab now is to try to find ways of coordinating motor, sensory, and autonomic function to work better together with the right timing. So it's all making good music together, so to say. And by doing that, we hope that bladder function can be improved, and that it can also make the difference from being changing the level of care for people, so that over time it will be more of an independent lifestyle with bladder function. The work that we do really started out with this conus cauda equina injury situation that I mentioned, and when we started this work, we needed to figure out, how can we study this in research animals. And so we developed methods and models for looking at this in animals, in animal models that could mimic also the clinical reality, which is paralysis, impairment of bladder and bowel function, also sensory deficits, and what we refer to as neuropathic pain. So we really worked on this from many different perspectives and putting the condition in the center and applying the different methods to address all the different aspects of this. And for us, it's been a really rewarding experience also as scientists, because it has allowed us to collaborate and work with people from really all over the world, and developed some really nice relationships and collaborations that have generated very new, fresh ideas and approaches. And in our earlier work, we were able to show that when you do a certain surgical procedure in surgically replanting or reinserting lesion nerve roots back into the nervous system, that you can indeed get some bladder function back. Not all function, but some. It certainly is better than what we call the flat line of function, where we don't see any kind of recordings in the injury state, but we can actually reverse some of that. And that is something that we are now moving forward to also looking in additional experimental models, so we can hopefully translate that closer to also clinical studies. And so it has, in addition to working with scientists and engineers, also allowed us to work with many clinicians, neurologists, neuroradiologists, and neurosurgeons. And in fact, last night I picked up Dr. Marcus Olsson up there from the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. He's a neurosurgeon who flew in yesterday, is here today, and tomorrow we're going up to UC Davis to do some surgeries together. And so he's a very busy man. And so it's that kind of pleasure that we have collaborations that are lasting years and years and years and just becoming stronger. And it's a way for us to develop the kind of disease team ideas that also the CERN funding mechanism allows for. And so we are working in a translational aspect with people with different kinds of specialties and representation, each one contributing towards the future on this. And our Stuart here mentioned also our CERN funding, and one of the very exciting new projects that we have are working with stem cells that are meant to replace not just motor neurons that innervate muscle, but also autonomic neurons that are being damaged and disappear as a result of conus and cauda equina injury. And this is an approach that I think will be particularly valuable for studies of chronic injuries, and ultimately for people with chronic injuries. And that's the reality is they are the people that represent the largest numbers. Acute injuries become chronic injury after a period of time. And if we can do a better job in providing new approaches to the treatment of chronic injuries, that will be very exciting. So there we are working with also very excellent colleagues up at UCLA to generate cells that we will be also transplanting in our models to replace lost neurons, to promote bladder function, looking at both functional and anatomical readouts. And I'm actually very pleased that I was able to bring with me from UCLA both Dr. Harriet Chang and Dr. Lisa Wu, who are also here today as our team members, so we also have continuity. So we are building on our past experience, and having the lab memory being brought with you is very valuable, so that we can, without slowing down, continue the work that we have started and are moving forward with. So, thank you.